Thank you. A lot of you guys have been lying to yourselves all day, telling yourself things like, this time it's going to be different. I've been here before. Every time I come here, the same story happens, but this time I've been learning about influence. I've been learning about how to craft a story, and as soon as I get done here, I'm going to pack up all my stuff. I'm going to go right out the door. I'm going to go over to the elevator bank. I'm going to go straight up to my room, and I'm going to start implementing all of the crap that I'm learning today so that I can make something happen out of the next 6 months. I got half the year left. This is what I'm going to do. But let me explain to you what's really going to happen. We're going to get done here, and you're going to execute your plan. You're going to make it about all the way through that door, and as you exit through that door, in order to get to the elevator bank, you've got to cross the casino, and as you're crossing the casino, you're going to run into Phil, and we all got a Phil. Phil is the guy who helps us make bad decisions. And Phil is going to say something to you like, hey man, come on, come have a drink with us. Come on, no, I wasn't in there, that guy's a tool. Come have a drink with us, and you're going to try and do the right thing, and you're going to say, no. I got to go upstairs. I'm going to execute the plan. Say, come on, man, just one drink, just one drink. And eventually it's going to say something like, all right, man, all right, one drink. Then I'm out, one drink. And that's it. You're done. The next thing you know, it's 4 o'clock in the morning, and you're swinging around a stripper pole at the Spearmint Rhino. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about. See his eyes light up when I said that? Yeah. You've never had a terrible night of debauchery in Vegas until you ended up with a Spearmint Rhino at 4 o'clock in the morning. You kick that door open at 6 a.m. Boy, that'll make you feel terrible about yourself. But anyway, knowing how this night is going to end, do me a favor for the next hour, focus with me for a minute, because I'm going to try and share some things with you that I think are going to help you grow your business, help you make more money, and work a lot less. Fair enough? Now, we're talking about branding, we're talking about influence, and I titled this thing, Building Your Personal Brand and Achieving Instant Authority and Credibility in Any Niche so that you can dominate your market, work less, and make more. And I hope this goes well because I have never taught this to anybody, and we got a lot to cover, and so I'm going to talk fast. But one of the reasons that I don't teach this is something that I do. I've done it in 2 industries. We're getting ready to break into a third. And one of the tough things about influence and teaching it is that influence is really a more palatable word for manipulation. That's really what we're doing when we influence people. We are attempting to move them to action to achieve some sort of desired end. And when we start talking about, hey, I'm going to teach you how to manipulate people, all of a sudden there's some people in the back of the room that say, I feel kind of dirty. It's dirty. And there's a hurdle that has to be overcome there, and it takes a lot of time to kind of get people over this hurdle of, hey, I'm going to teach you how to manipulate people. But in the end, manipulation isn't really that bad of a word. In reality, there's people here, obviously, who could lose 10 pounds. I could stand to lose 10 pounds. If I manipulate you into losing 10 pounds the healthy way, have I done you a disservice? No, I haven't. So the goal of influence is to hopefully get them to a point where you have some control over the decision-making process in their life, even if it's in a narrow, defined niche. So I got 2 goals for the presentation today. First, flip the table on the prospecting nightmare and teach you some strategies that will help you do more business and have people showing up to give you money rather than you going out to prospect. Does anybody here like prospecting? One guy. Of course you do. Of course you do, Mark. And secondly is to teach you some simple strategies to help you maximize the dollar value of each client. So what I want you to do is I want you to be able to maximize how much money you're getting from each person who comes to you. What are we trying to achieve through influence? Well, number one is we want to attract people who have a desire for our product and or service and the ability to pay. Now, they have to have both. It doesn't do any good to have one. Poor people showing up or people with really bad credit don't get home loans. So the guy needs both the ability and the desire for what you have. We want to increase engagement with our audience and with the message that we're trying to deliver through the sales process. The more influence we have over people, the more they listen and the better that they respond. We ultimately want them to buy our stuff, to sign on the line which is dotted. And then last but not least, loyalty and retention. And I would add to that advocacy. One of the things that we want to create out of our clients, people who do business with us, is we want them talking about us and how great we are and how awesome it is to be near us, to be around us, to be close to us. And the better job we do of that, the more influence we are going to have one echelon, one tier lower, which is, as they were saying before, millennials go to their friends first. So the more influence you have with individuals close to you and the better job you do of creating this influence for them, the bigger advocates they become for you in the future. A little background on me. I graduated from high school, and the next day I joined the Marine Corps. While I was in the Marine Corps, I worked for a special operations unit specializing in counterterrorism, counterinsurgency, hostage rescue, and explosive entry. I am the Marine Corps. Marine Corps has a version of special operations called Force Reconnaissance. It is the Marine Corps' version of the Navy SEALs or Special Forces in the Army, pararescue in the Air Force. And after I got out, I realized very quickly that my skills did not transfer into the private sector. There were very few people who needed an explosive breacher in the private sector. So one of the first jobs I got was selling ADT security systems door to door. And I hated that job. I did it for an entire winter, every night, drugging through the door, doing this security system sales. But it's something that I think that every good salesman should at least experience because of what it teaches you. You see, if we're doing the right thing with our influence, we want to create and manage as much of the selling process as we can. And so a lot of you guys, I know when you meet with people, you're meeting at coffee shops, or you're trying to go to their house, and you're trying to do anything that you can to kind of get in contact with them, get that face-to-face meeting. It's something that, after what I know now, I would never, ever, ever do. That guy's coming to me or we're not doing business. And I lay down an expectation in the beginning that if he wants to do business with me, that's what he has to do. Because when you walk into somebody's house, you never know. Typically, the guy's going to open the door. He's going to just got off a 12-hour shift. He's angry to see that you're going to get halfway through your pitch. He's like, God, not another one of you guys. And you're going to start talking about ADT security, and then all of a sudden, the wife's going to poke her head out of the kitchen to the front door and go, hey, I wanted to talk to you. Because the gal down the street, whose husband works the night shift, just got robbed, and she's really freaked out, and so she wants to talk to me about what's going on. So she invites me in. We got 2 screaming kids running around. The next thing you know, I'm trying to demonstrate security systems and apparatuses and how they work to this couple. The wife's running back and forth to the kitchen. I got a collie in my lap. Some 4-year-olds put my hair in rollers. No, seriously, that happened. It really did. I'm not lying. That was a situation I was in. And so I took a couple of valuable things away from that. I realized that I hated prospecting. That it seemed like a waste of time. Is that if I was really good at what I was doing, I didn't want to have to prospect. I'm always on the defensive if I'm prospecting. Because if I have to go out and ask somebody for business or go out and try and fetch business, then immediately I'm set apart as the sales guy. I want to set myself up as a trusted advisor rather than a salesperson. And so I realized very early on that, man, if I didn't have to go prospect, I sure didn't want to. I wanted to figure out a better way to do it. The second thing was, there is nothing quite as satisfying if you are good at what you do and you love it, is to slide a contract across the table, hand somebody a pen, and have them sign on the line and buy your stuff. It is an incredibly fulfilling process that in such a narrow window of time, typically selling door to door, you have an hour, maybe 2 hours if they really like you, to instantly overcome all of the hurdles, establish rapport, show them the product, and get them to purchase it from you. And for you to be able to do that in a very narrow window of time, it's an incredibly satisfying experience. And so I had a lot of sales jobs after that. They were really bad. I sold siding and windows, which is absolutely the worst. I sold commercial and residential real estate for a time, so I'm not a complete knucklehead with what you guys do. I do understand a little bit of that process. And then I got a call from a friend of mine right after the war kicked off in Iraq, and he said, hey, would you like to come overseas and use some of those useless skills that you learned in the Marine Corps? Because they've got a lot of people up here who don't know the first thing about security, and they got to kind of move around the country. And I said, yeah, I would, because they wanted to pay me more money than I'd ever seen in my life. And so I joined a company called Blackwater. Does anybody know what Blackwater is? Okay, some of you do. It is, and I spent the next 5 years as a mercenary working for Blackwater and their ugly little cousin Greystone. Soldier for hire, for being politically correct. And my job there was basically to follow around diplomats and ensure that they didn't die. And I worked in Iraq and Afghanistan for a bunch of private companies as well as public government agencies for diplomats that were working there, and I worked on ambassador's detail in Afghanistan. And I realized that when you're doing this, you have a lot of two things when you're contracting: a lot of money and a lot of time. Because I know it sounds crazy, but when a diplomat goes over to a place like Iraq and he's working out of somewhere like Mosul, which in 2005 was one of the most dangerous places on earth, about 21 IEDs a day, those are explosives that go off in the city, he doesn't want to go anywhere. Like, he won't leave his room unless somebody in Washington got a cattle prod on him. And so I would work maybe 2 days a week for 3 or 4 hours. And the rest of my time, I'm sitting around trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. And I decided that if I could do anything, I'd probably want to work in the currency markets, or in the financial markets. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. Maybe be a broker, maybe not, maybe start a hedge fund. But I knew that the first thing I ought to do is kind of figure out what you do in the financial markets. And so I started learning how to trade. And I started in penny stocks and then went to futures and ended up in currencies. And I got really good at it. I got good enough at it that I left the contracting business and went to trade full-time, and my goal was to open up a hedge fund, raise 10 million, 20 million bucks, and just run a little tiny fund. And I realized after doing that for about 6 months that there was an incredible amount of money to be made in just the education side of the business, in just teaching people what I knew. There was a massive desire for people who were good speakers and who understood the markets and who could provide value. There's a host of folks out there. And so I partnered with a friend of mine, and we started Trade Empowered, which has become one of the largest and most successful trading education programs in the world. We market to currency traders and futures traders, as well as some investors, although not much. And the way I started doing that was I started putting out these videos online when I was in Afghanistan, trying to figure out, try to show people what I was doing. And at the time, I had no idea what I was really creating, but I understand it now, and so I want to share it with you. When we talk about influencing and attracting people, there's actually tiers of levels of people that have influence in our lives. The very first one, the lowest rung, is like a generalist. So if I asked you what you did and you said, well, I'm a salesman, right? You're basically like, you're the most generic thing you could possibly be. Now, what's the next question that somebody logically asks you when you say, I'm a salesman? What do you sell? Now, you might think that they're asking you that because they genuinely care, but most of the time they don't. So when I'm having a conversation with you and you say, I'm a salesman, and I say, oh, really, what do you sell? It's not because I care. I really don't. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to figure out, where do I put you subconsciously on this pyramid? How much authority, how much influence should I give you in terms of a ranking? So if you went one level deeper and you said, I'm a mortgage loan originator, okay, I'm a specialist. I have a specific type of sales that I do. And now I can instantly decide where I want to put you on his. Now, one level up from that is authority, an authority figure. And the easiest way to explain this is when you start talking about infomercials on TV. They would have a lot of testimonials. They would bring the guy out and say, hey, you take this magic pill. Look, I went from being an obese, disgusting blob to having these terrific six-pack abs. This is the best pill I've ever had, and if you take this pill, you'll have these abs too. And they found they could sell a lot of stuff that way. But they found that when they brought a guy out in a lab coat that said, Dr. Whatever, Spachemin, that, yeah, somebody got the joke. All right. That they would sell 2-3 times as much. Something about having an authority figure there. They did the same thing if you were selling security systems and you put a police officer there. Or if you could find a burglar that was well known enough to say, I've never been able to break into a house that had an AD. When I see the ADT sign, I pass it. Right? You create authority, and as you create authority, you sell a lot more product. One level up from that is celebrity. So you would think that some guy who had won a Nobel Prize for nutrition would have more influence over our lives on how we should eat, how we should exercise than, say, Kim Kardashian. If you believe that, you would be wrong. Kim Kardashian has her own fitness video line of 3-minute video exercises that you can do if you need to tone up for the weekend. Yeah. When I checked on this initially, she had made about $3 million selling these 3-minute, lose weight for the wedding exercise videos. And you say to yourself, why? I mean, this woman is famous for being famous. She does nothing. She wakes up in the morning, she has all day to exercise. She has a personal chef, a nutritionist, 2 or 3 trainers, depending on what type of training she wants to do. And this woman's an authority on what you need to do to lose weight? I don't think so. But she will sell a truckload more than some guy who won a Nobel Prize in nutrition. I don't know if they give those out, but it sounds good. Now, one up from there is a celebrity authority. So now we're really getting into it. This is really where we want to be. Now, celebrity authority, you can think Dr. Oz. Dr. Oz is not only a surgeon, but Oprah Winfrey also made him famous. So when Dr. Oz comes on TV and he says, hey, here's a new diet that you guys ought to try, or here's a new food that you ought to eat, or hey, here's a new way to remove the wrinkles, or whatever, he has an incredible amount of authority on what you guys do and how you guys act, because he is both an authority figure in the healthcare niche and he's a celebrity. And what we realize and what we find is that compensation for the same work based on who you are can vary significantly. We already talked about Dr. Oz. You can talk about your local financial planner versus someone like Susie Orman. Now what's funny is that if you talk to any good financial planners about Susie Orman, they all hate her. They think she's terrible advice. I can't believe she's on TV. She's the worst possible financial planner. I sit and listen to her show and I watch it just so I can scream at her. She's so dumb. Which proves you don't even have to be good at it. I'm serious. But that local financial planner is pulling down, if he's really, 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 really good, he's pulling down a couple of $100,000 a year. Susie Orman's worth $40 million. Do you see what I'm saying? You see the power of celebrity and authority? You see the difference that it makes in your business and your life? You can look at a personal trainer versus Jillian Michaels. Jillian Michaels is the gal from The Biggest Loser. Before she became the trainer on The Biggest Loser, she was your average run-of-the-mill trainer. She was working in Southern California. She was running spinning classes and doing personal training for $25 or $50 an hour. Now she is a trainer to the stars. She has her own DVD line because she became a celebrity, and she is also an authority figure in her niche. So the goal, if we understand that compensation varies significantly based on who you are, then the goal is to try and get to that celebrity and authority status. Now, when we talk about influence, we are not talking about information. Influence is not information. Influence is not education. We educate through education. We inform through information. So, the fact is that a lot of you guys are spending a lot of time trying to teach people about what you do, and the truth is, none of them care. None of them care about your credentials. They don't care about the 50 years that you've got in the business. They don't care about how many loans you close every single month. They don't give a rip about that. They don't. That's not why they buy. All the information about where loans are and where they're going, that's not influence. That's just simply information, and people are overwhelmed with information. They don't need any more. Stop giving it to them. So if they don't want information and they don't want education, what do they want? Faith. Certainty. They want a guarantee. When you influence, that's what you are providing. Somebody was talking in the back of the room. I heard somebody say, I can't remember what you guys were talking about, but you're talking about that people no longer, they kind of want to do it themselves. They want to go and check the rates on their own, and they don't really want to call and talk to a sales guy, so they don't want to feel like they're being sold. They'd rather just let me go online and figure it out. All I want is some guy I know is going to take care of it, and then I want to tell him, go and do it, and when it's done, come back to me. I don't want to have to work. I got too many things going on in my life. I got 4 kids. I run 2 businesses. I'm coming here to speak to you guys. I don't have time to figure out what the loan rate is on my next house. I just want to know that it's getting done. In order to sell someone, in order for someone to buy from you, they must know, like, and trust you. And one of the difficult things is in most sales businesses, you are trying to do this from the point of first contact. You are, just like when I was selling door to door, you have people coming in and you're trying to develop that rapport, you're trying to teach them a little bit about you, you're trying to build this trust factor with them from that point on. And what I want to try and show you how to do is move this process to way before they ever meet you. So that when they first come into contact with you, they already know, like, and trust you. It's not really a question of whether or not they want to do business with you. The only question should be, will you do business with them? And if you don't think you can create that as loan originators, I'm telling you, you can. You can create a situation where a guy calls you up on the phone you've never heard from in your life and says to you, I've been following you for a long time. I love what you're doing. Please, I need to get a loan done. I know you don't take everybody, but please take my loan. And here's all the reasons why you ought to take it. You think I'm joking. When I get to the end of this, I'll show you how you do it. I'll show you how I would do it, right? So at the end of this, I thought, a little practical application. If I was going to get dropped into the mortgage business, how would I build the business? And I'm going to show you what I would do. So the first thing that you have to do in order to get people to know, like, and trust you is to establish some sort of a backstory. We'll call this an origin story, or what do you want to be known for? For example, what's your opinion on wealth, on power, politics, sex, education, success, religion, parenting, marriage, business? Do your clients know your opinion on politics? It's important that they do. Do they know your opinion on marriage and parenting? Have you been divorced 6 times? It's okay. It doesn't really matter. There may be some tweaking that needs to get done. So, for example, if you're a hardcore anarchist and you believe that, hey, you'd really like to see the government burn to the ground, right? Maybe you don't lead with that. Maybe we soften that just a little bit to be someone who believes in very limited government, who believes that you ought to be responsible for your own life. Or maybe you believe, you know what you're selling it's really far better for you to be someone who believes that the government ought to take care of everything. The important thing is that in order for someone to know, like, and trust you, they really have to know who you are. And so you have to establish this with them. And talk about origin story. There are 100 stories that I have. Where do you come from? Where are your struggles and hurdles? What drives you and why? I gave you a little bit of my backstory. You notice that I skipped over the part where I was a mercenary in Afghanistan, and I didn't tell you about the 3 times that I got blown up. I didn't tell you about the very exciting stories, riveting, stuff for later, but not applicable here. That's a story for a different group. But I'll tell you how I do this, how I might establish this with a simple story. When I was younger and I didn't have any money, I was reading Tony Robbins' Awaken the Sleeping Giant Within. He's going to be keynoting, I think, a couple of days from now. Is that right, Mark? Okay. And that book is made to be used as a workbook. This is the way I explain the story, by the way. This book's designed to be a workbook, and I really treated it like that. And so they start asking you to write down all of your goals. Right? And your average person is like, all right, what do I want? Dream big, Tony says. All right, I want a Ferrari, and I want a house with 2 pools. Why 2 pools? Because screw you, 2 pools. Right? And I want a helicopter and a G-14. I know they don't make them, but I'm going to have one anyway. And you start dreaming really big. And I had a lot of that stuff too. But one of the other things I had is my life is really more about, I tend to dislike most stuff, like people. I don't... You laugh. You're real. I'm terribly introverted. Like, we get done here, and people are going to come up and say things to me, and I'm going to feel awkward. But my point being is that much of my goals were built around stuff I wouldn't have to do anymore. So, like, one of them was I never want to wait in line again. I've never seen Angelina Jolie waiting for a cup of coffee. That's not what successful rich people do. They don't wait in lines. So when I make it, I'm never going to stand in another line. I specifically didn't get any coffee this morning because there was a line. I just refused to do it. Screw it. I'm not standing in a line. I'm not waiting. Another one was never going to mow my own lawn again. And it doesn't really matter now. I have somebody who mows my lawn, but eventually my kids are going to be big enough, so I'm going to check that box no matter what happens. And even if I'm poor, lawns getting mowed not by me. And then another one was I'm the product of a public education, which means I am an absolutely atrocious speller. I'm terrible at it. Awful. And so one of the goals I wrote down was I'm never going to have to worry about spelling or grammar again. And the way I got this was I was listening to a book on tape on Andrew Carnegie. And Andrew Carnegie got like 6 years of education. He was one of the worst spellers. He was known for being one of the worst spellers and also the richest man alive. This is how arrogant this guy was. I'm reading this story. He realized how bad of a speller he was, and he created his own shorthand. And he said, this is what he said. He goes, he decided that rather than work on his own deficiency, he would try to petition to have the dictionary changed. True story. And I'm like, that guy's got it figured out. Screw working on my own deficiencies. I'm gonna contort the world to suit me, to fix my little peccadillos and shortcomings. And so I tell this story, and there's all kinds of little information about me in that story that you learn through me telling that story. You learn about what my opinion is on wealth and on success, and about working on deficiencies. I'm a history buff because I was studying Andrew Carnegie. There's all kinds of little pieces of that in there, and you learn an incredible amount about me on whether and deciding whether or not this is somebody that, hey, do I really trust this guy? Do I feel like he's being honest with me? Now, truthfully, because I've never given this presentation, do you guys feel like I'm being honest with you? Am I a fairly likable person? All right. So we're 2 down. I won't ask if you trust me. All right. To influence your audience, they must be fascinated with you. Jim Rome said fascination is one step beyond interest. Interested people want to know if it works. Fascinated people want to know how it works. You have to figure out a way, and I'll show you how I do this in a minute, to get people fascinated with you and what you do and what you're about. Now, how do you know if they're fascinated with you? All right? Do your clients wait anxiously for updates on your last event? Who are the guys who listen to my show over here? Yeah, three or four guys over here who listen to the show. One who showed up, tweeted it out, said he was here, told everybody about it. Fascinated enough with me and what I'm doing to show up here to hear my speech, right? Riveting, I know. But that's movement. That tells me that what I'm doing on my show, and I'll get to the show in a minute, is having an effect. Are they looking for my emails? Do they want to know what I'm doing and where I'm at and what's going on? Are they seeking you out to hear your opinion on current events, on anything? Do they send you mail? Or more importantly, do they send you gifts? I have every single year around the holidays, starting about the beginning of December, gifts start arriving to the Trade Empowered office from people I do not know. I have thousands and thousands of clients, and we also get gifts from people who've never bought anything from us, but who see the content that we produce and put online for free and feel obligated, because of everything we're giving away, to send us a gift. Are your clients doing that for you? It's one way to know whether or not they're fascinated with you. And so we get all kinds of stuff. If you watch my show, you see on my desk that I've got a bull and a bear bronze statue, and I also have an embossed statue of Ron Paul. And both of those were gifts from people who just sent them to me because they liked what I was doing. And then last but not least, do they seek you out for recognition or approval? This is something that, again, when people are fascinated with you, they want your approval. They want you telling them that they did a good job. To influence your audience, be fascinated with you, they also must feel that you share common values and or principles. And they must believe that you care. Yeah, you can tell. Exactly. See? I did this presentation. That they care about them and their situation. Okay? Now, I'll tell you a story that piggybacks off of the story I told about not being a very good speller. I write a lot of my own email copy because I want it to sound a specific way. And it is, because I don't really care whether I'm a good speller or whether it's grammatically correct, I typically write it once and send it. And if it's full of grammatical errors and spelling problems, screw it. What do I care? So I send out these emails, and almost without fail, I will get somebody who emails me back and says, Jason, man, listen, I love you. I love what you do, but you have got to work on your spelling. You've got to. You're in the financial services business, right? It makes you look stupid. It makes you look unintelligent. And then I look at the buyers from the email I just sent out, because I want them to buy my stuff, and I realize that this guy just bought the stuff in the email that he said made me look stupid. And so I email him back and I say, yeah, man, but you just bought the stuff. And he said, well, yeah, Jason, but you see, I've been following you for a long time. I know you. You see, other people may not know you the way that I know you. I've never met this guy in my life. I don't know who he is. I got tens of thousands of people on my email list. I don't know who he is, but he thinks, he sees there's a relationship there. He believes he knows me. And he believes he knows me on an intimate and personal level in a way that my other client, the other 50,000 people on my email list, obviously don't know me. And so he's concerned for me and he's trying to help me. He believes that we share common values and principles and that I care about him and his personal situation. Now, the truth is I do care about putting out a good product. And I do care about the fact that he is satisfied with what it is that we produce, so hopefully he will buy again and tell his friends. But I cannot possibly care about him and his personal situation in a way that he needs in order to feel comfortable buying from me. It's not possible. But I have to establish for myself and for him a way for that exchange to occur. Does that make sense? How I became a nationally syndicated radio show host in 5 months with no prior experience in radio and no connection to the industry. That's how you write a headline. Yep, you'd sign up to find that out if you were interested in radio. Oh, I wonder how he did that. So about 2 years ago, about 2 years ago, because we've been doing the show for about 18 months, I decided that I wanted to talk about economics and politics. Now, these are two things that you should never talk about with your clients because undoubtedly half of them are going to be hardcore progressives, and you're going to start talking about free market economics and how progressives are stupid, and you're really going to alienate people. And so it was something I'd stayed away from in my regular business because I didn't want to alienate those people. And because I focused purely on technical analysis, chart trading, I didn't talk a lot about fundamentals or economics. But these are things I know a lot about, and I wanted to talk about them. And so my business was doing well. I had people in place, and I said, oh, I'm thinking about starting this show. And Darren, who's my right-hand man at the company, said, are you sure? And I said, screw it. Why not? What's the worst that could happen? Now, I recognize that, screw it. What's the worst that could happen? Did not always precede the best of outcomes. But in this case, it worked all right. And I started a political and economic podcast, and I started it from scratch. So I didn't know the first thing about radio. I had no connections in radio, and I started this little podcast. And I did a couple of things that helped me to build that podcast into one of the largest political podcasts on the internet. And I'll share with you what we did. So this is kind of a practical application of what we've been talking about. So the first thing is I named the podcast the Jason Stapleton Program. Now why? Because nobody in this particular niche knows anything about me. There's no brand recognition there, right? Well, the reason I did that, because if you talk to anybody who sells courses on how to do this, because I bought them, they'll tell you, well, you need to really name your show something that's really search engine optimized so that they can look at your show and look at your graphics and instantly tell what your show's about. So you should call it like the Libertarian Economic Podcast. Well, here's the problem with that. There's a reason they call it the Ellen DeGeneres Show and not Show with Great Interviews that breaks up the monotony of housework show, right? They don't call it that because she's branding herself. Look at every single major talk show host in America. Every one of them. Every one of them. Oprah, Steve Harvey, Rush Limbaugh if you want to go into radio, Sean Hannity, Tom Hartman if you're on the liberal side of things. Every single one of them, Ellen DeGeneres, all of them have personally branded shows. There's a reason for that. That is not on accident. And so I named it the Jason Stapleton Program. The second thing I did was I branded it the #1 libertarian voice in America. Now, I'll admit this was a bit of a stretch because I had about 6 people listening to the show at the time. Well, the assumption is that somebody somewhere, I won an award for something. Oh, he must be good. He's the #1 guy. Well, the truth is that one is vague. Like, what is it? Well, I think I'm the best. So I'm the #1 guy. I'm that arrogant. Remember, I'm the guy who's going to contort the world to fit my deficiencies. But this adds credibility without there really being any credibility. Now, I told you guys, we're talking about manipulation here. So you got to shake off that feeling. It's not untruthful, but again, it was designed to gain authority, to gain celebrity early on in the process. The next thing that I did was I bought airtime on an AM station outside of LA. And they have pay-to-play airwaves everywhere. This one happened to just barely touch Los Angeles, and that was on purpose. So that the reason that I bought airtime on these stations, and I didn't do it for very long, but the reason I did it was because having your own podcast is a lot like managing your own fantasy football team, right? Not a lot of respect. Everyone just assumes that you're working in your basement in a ham radio broadcasting to 6 people, which was not that far off from what I was doing. But by getting instantly onto radio, I can now say I am on the radio in Los Angeles. Again, what are we talking about doing? We're moving up the ladder from generalist to celebrity authority. On the show every day, I'm building my authority in my niche by talking with people and explaining to them the laws of supply and demand, economics, and politics. And I'm building an audience that way. The very last thing that I did was I went out to, and I didn't put this on the slide, but I went out to other shows that already had a significant audience in my niche, and I paid them to advertise my name. So you get the biggest people in the industry, because most of these guys are running podcasts part-time. They have no long-term vision. They don't know what they're going to do with it. They just like talking, so they get on a radio, they get on the microphone, and they got a couple of thousand people listening to them. So I went to that guy and I said, what would it cost for you to advertise my podcast on your show? And some of these guys, I was buying 5 spots for $125. And I'm using his authority, his celebrity, to his audience that he has a power and influence over, and I'm having him say, go listen to this guy. It's powerful. It worked beautifully. We went from 6 listeners to 200 listeners to 2,000 listeners to 10,000 listeners. We're now running right up against 20,000 listeners a day, which makes us one of the top 3% of all podcasts anywhere in the world. Now, the really cool thing that happened here in buying airtime on that station in LA is the guy who owned that station had been doing it for like 30 years. And so we got to be pretty good friends. He liked the show. He was a little bit more liberal than I was, but he was a really great guy, and I was pumping him for information on how the business worked because I didn't know what I wanted to do. Maybe I did want to go into radio. Maybe I did want to pursue that angle. All I knew is I just wanted to have an access to listeners. Well, he was friends with one of the program managers at USA Radio Network, which is a national syndication network, and he liked my show enough that he sent it to them. And so after being on the air with them for about 60 days, my show went over to USA Radio, and they picked it up in a weekend spot. 1 episode a week, played on the weekend in their syndication network, which makes me now a syndicated libertarian radio show host. It actually makes me one of the only libertarian radio show hosts in America to be nationally syndicated. So guess what I did with that? I told everybody I knew about it. That's what grew the numbers. People have instant, well, this guy's got credibility. Yeah, he's got some authority. Look, he's nationally syndicated. Maybe his show doesn't suck. And they start listening. That's how Mark got roped into it. He's like, well, other people like him. There's an incredible amount of influence that other people have on us. Testimonials are incredibly powerful because it is social proof. The more people listen to the show, the more people you remind listen to the show, the more people you do business with, the more authority you have, the more credibility you have, all right? So I decided, what am I going to do next? Like, how else could I create celebrity and authority? Well, I need a PR firm because what I really want is get my face in some magazines. I want to create, because that's what famous people do, right? Celebrity, I already got some authority. I'm trying to build the celebrity. So I need to get my face on the cover of some magazines. How do I get my face on the cover of GQ? It ain't going to happen, right? This is not a face for GQ. And so I started trying to figure out how I was going to do this, and I said, well, why don't I just create my own magazine? So I did. So I created this magazine. Let me explain how this works. I created my own magazine. There's multi-prongs to this, and I won't get into all of them. But I created my own magazine. Now, the only article that I wrote in this magazine was the article on me, and this article is nothing more than a gigantic sales letter for my show. And every article in here is related to the show. So the 10-episode challenge makes believers out of skeptics. Guess what I have? I have a 10-episode challenge for my show. So I went out to my audience and I said, who wants to have an article that they write in a magazine? And I had 30 people send me emails back. And I said, okay, here's the topics. You, go. I had them write the articles. I had them send them to me. And within 3 weeks from concept to production, we had our own magazine. And I put my face right on the freaking cover. Right? Now, this is basically nothing more than a sales tool for me. But what I did was I went out to my audience and I said, who wants one? I'm going to print up a bunch of these, maybe 1,000. I said, I'll give them away for free. I said, here's the one thing I want you to do with it. I said, when you're done reading it, take it to your local doctor's office, take it to your mechanic shop the next time you're there, and I want you to leave it on the table with the rest of the magazines that are there so that we can, again, create more celebrity and more authority. And not only did I have people say, yeah, send me a magazine, people said, can I buy another one? Because I want one to keep. And then I had people say, will you autograph one for me? And so I said, yeah, why not? If you want an autograph one, it's $25. Mark, did you buy an autograph one? I figured you did. I'm talking to Darren, who produces the show for me, and I'm like, what should we charge for an autograph one? And he goes, charge $25. What was it? Was it 25 or 50? I don't remember what it was. No, it was $50. I remember it was $50 for an autograph one. And he said, what's that? Yeah, I said, he said $50. And I'm like, nobody's going to pay $50. This is a sales piece. Nobody's paying $50 for my autograph. I sold out of all of them. We said, well, we'll sell 25 and we'll make it exclusive and I'll number each one of them. And we sold out in like a day. And then I sold off a bunch of the rest of them, and then I gave them away. And then what happened was, this shows the power of influence over an audience that you have, is I took the thing, and people started posting pictures of themselves leaving the magazine all across the country. And so the social proof of people saying, yeah, I did what you told me to do. See that? See what I told them to do, and they went and did it? That's the power of influence. You can do that in your niche. How? So how are you going to do it? So I took this approach and I said, all right, because before I came here, I actually sat down and interviewed a couple of different people who are in your business. They do a fair amount of business. They don't do $1 billion, but they do a fair amount of business. And I talked with them a little bit about the business and how it works and tried to figure out a game plan of how it would work. One of the things that they told me, both of them that I talked to, said, yeah, it's really a local business. And I said, yeah, but you can write loans nationally, right? Well, yeah, we can write them, but people still want to come in and they kind of want to sit down and they want to, it's still relational bills and business, man. And this is foreign to me because everything I do is online. And so I thought, okay, let me do a little research. And I looked at Kansas City. Kansas City homeowners, there's 467,000, roughly. I don't know. This is the best number I could come up with. It's probably high. And about 14% of them change homes every year. That's about 65,000 people that I have in a pool that might need a mortgage. If I look nationally, roughly 86 million homeowners is what I could come up with. That was the best statistic I could find. And about 12 million of those are going to change homes every single year. And I said to myself, well, let's say that only 10% of those guys are like me. They don't give a rip who you are. They just really want the thing done, and they don't care if you're in Poughkeepsie. I'm fine with that, just as long as you're giving me good service and you're getting the job done. It's 10% of those people. That's 1.2 million people. So I have a choice. I can either sell loans locally and focus on a local market, or I can focus on selling loans nationally. Which one do I want to do? Well, I'm going to differentiate myself by not even trying to mess with local business. I'm just going to go right after that 10% that would consider doing business with a distance loan originator. Future questions I would ask is, what pool of buyers would I want to target? So I got 1 million people, that's really too big, so how do I hone that in? Maybe I go after first-time buyers or first-time sellers or both. That can be a target. Maybe that reduces my number to 100,000. I don't know. We'd have to do some more research to find it out. Or what can I specialize in? So another way is, how do I move myself up that authority ladder to out of the generalist or specialist range into the authority category? Maybe I say, you know what? I don't want to write any loan under $450,000. That's what I'm going to focus on. I got 1.2 million people I'm going to focus on. If I focus on only loans over $450,000, these are just ideas. Okay? The next thing I would do is I would start assembling industry leaders in every piece of the home buying and owning process. So I would go out in my local area, in the Kansas City area, and I'd find a title company, a real estate agent, a home inspector, termite mitigation, radon. This is just the stuff I came up with. Roofer, carpentry company, interior design, security expert, accountant, doctor, you name it. And what I would do is I would use the This Old Home approach to start building a video business on YouTube. And it would work something like this. I call up the foundation specialist and I say, hey guy, you doing any cool projects? I mean, I only focus on houses that are over $450,000. So you got anything like that? The second that he's got something like that, he gives me a call. I come out with some camera equipment and I do it This Old House style. And I say, okay, so tell me what you're doing here. Talk me through it. Share with me how you're lining it up. How does the system work? Okay, we're going to see it from start to finish, and I'm going to piece this whole thing together. I'm going to put it online. And I'm going to do that for every single niche that I can think of, so that I create an archive of really compelling, interesting information for anybody who's searching for anything having to do with buying or selling a home or just managing a home. Because again, I got to stay in front of them all the time. I got to give them something compelling. If they're buying or selling a home, they're doing that once every 5 to 7 years. It's not enough. I got to find some other way to stay in front of them. So I'm going to start building out this video-based content to try and create a compelling reason for them to sign up with me and to follow what I do. The next thing I'm going to do is to create a series of ethical bribes to convince people to give me their email in exchange for great content. So at the end of every one of my videos, I'll say something like, hey, if you like these videos, I do one a week or two a month, and if you just give me your email address, I'll send it to you along with this really great report on the 3 biggest mistakes that can cost you thousands on your next home loan. How to save you thousands on your next home. Don't get screwed, a simple secret to buying the perfect home. So I got all these headlines. Those are just 3 that I came up with. I've got all these headlines that I'm going to offer them some ethical bribes to give me their email address. So now I have their email address. I can contact them on a regular basis every time I put out a new piece of content. Every time I find something that I think would be valuable to them, I can send it to them to stay in their loop of consciousness. And this is how I built the trading business. The trading business that now basically I don't really do anything, and it just makes me a nice living. I built it by simply putting videos online with content that people would want. If you want to see an example of this, you can go here. This is a pretty good one. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. It's called Neighborhood Loans, and they are doing something very similar to what I'm talking about here. They do home tours, which is another great one. Hey, let me come out, walk through your home. I'll put your home online. You can talk about the great features that are in the house. It gives the buyer a reason or the seller a reason to share your videos with people. Maybe they come back and look at it. And one of the problems with this is that it's not personally branded, so it's corporately branded. I would change that. I would put me in front of it just simply because I'm trying to create personal brand with what I do. But this is the idea, is that we focus on creating celebrity and authority in everything that we do so that we can have influence over those people that we want to engage in our buying process, and that when they come to us, see, if somebody's subscribed, I don't know how many subscribers they've got, a little over 1,000. So I got 1,000 people who are interested enough in this to want to see the videos and subscribe to everything that they're doing. So as we push this through, they just continue to stay in front of them. And when it comes time for these guys for these people who are following them to need a loan, they're calling the phone. And guess what? There's already rapport established there. Know, like, and trust. They already got that. They wouldn't have called you if they didn't. And so now it's just simply a matter of, okay, yeah, I can handle your loan. Sure, let me take you through. No selling. I don't care if you buy or not. You want to know why? Because I got 1,000 people who follow me. Yeah, I'm writing more business than I know what to do with. So, I mean, do it, don't do it, whatever. This is an attitude, takeaway selling that works really well in a lot of different niches and that would work for you guys too. Well, thank you guys very much. I really appreciate you guys letting me come and talk. Thank you.